Alright, so in my last video, my very first video, ironically put it like that. Anyway, last video, first video, I told my story. I told the story of the time I robbed a bank and how it all went down. So this video is really to answer the number one question that I've been asked and people have wanted to ask. Some people are just so kind they don't even want to ask, but it's on the back of their mind. Number one question, why? Why did you do that? Why? Like, that's so stupid, that's idiotic. What were you thinking? That's the question. So I'm going to answer that in this video. So, getting straight to it. Why? Number one reason is really quite simple. I wanted some money. I felt like at this point in time, I felt like money was the solution to my problems. Look at that. We got a, oh goodness, there was a fish there. There's still a fish there. Oh my goodness, I missed him 2 times. Anyway, I felt like money was the solution to my problems, but it really wasn't, and I realize that now. I didn't really see it at that time, but I thought it wasn't. I really thought it was. So here's some stuff that had been going on. For about 3 years leading up to me doing this, I had been smoking weed religiously. Don't get mad at me, stoners. I'm not putting weed down entirely right here. I am putting down abuse, weed abuse, or drug abuse of any kind. So what had happened was for 3 years, just about 3 years, I was smoking every day, heavily. And as you can imagine, just with life in general, a lot of different stuff happened in 3 years' time. There were a lot of ups and downs. But basically what happened is I had self-medicated. I had subdued my emotions for all that time and hadn't really processed or worked through any of the life's challenges. Just kind of let them go by. So, January 2012, the very beginning of the year, I decided, you know, weed isn't necessarily hurting me, but it's not helping me, so I want to stop. And I came up with this idea. I was just going to stop cold turkey, and I did. Let me tell you, about 10 days into it, I was lost. I was severely confused, feeling stuff that I hadn't felt before, or hadn't felt in a long time. And honestly, I didn't even realize how far gone I was. I didn't realize why I was feeling this way until later on, when I realized this was like I'd gone through a withdrawal period from this particular substance, and all the stuff that I had suppressed for all that time was coming back now. So just to give you an idea of some of the stuff that I had been dealing with, my parents, who had been married for 17, 18 years, something like that, divorced during that 3-year period. It was kind of a nasty thing. It happened really unexpectedly to me. The way it went down, it was just kind of messy. My parents were both ministers, or leaders in the faith. So this was quite devastating for me because it kind of shook my core beliefs. I didn't really realize, I didn't know or understand believers, spiritual leaders, not trying to figure it out, how to work something out. So it was difficult for me, if I'm quite honest about it. Beyond that, I dropped out of college, and I was basically living this lie. I've been convincing my family and friends that I was still in college. I was getting ready to graduate here within the next month or 2. I was supposed to be graduating. That was a lie. And I didn't really have a plan. I didn't have a plan at all for how to come back from this lie, or what I was going to do when it came time to graduate. I had no game plan for that. So there was a certain pressure added with that I just didn't know how to process. I didn't have a steady job. The jobs that I had were kind of dead-end jobs, and it just didn't make sense to me. I had no plan for my life, no way of approaching life, no plan of attack. And basically, I just got to a point where I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what I was doing or what to do. Um, and I needed something to change. I wanted something to change. So, me, the foolish state of mind that I was in, I felt like money was the solution. I figured I could get some money, I could head out of town, move to a new place, and start fresh. Maybe start a business of some sort. Do anything differently than what I've been doing. So I came up with this plan. There you have it, folks. It seems like it should be something way more complicated, but it's really not. When you're, oh yeah, there was actually one other big thing, one other really, really big thing. Um, I stopped praying. I stopped praying. I stopped reading my Bible. I pulled away from everybody that was, involved with my church. I was spiritually dead. That's the most important thing. I was spiritually dead. I grew up in church. I grew up with this understanding of who God is and who Jesus is and the Holy Spirit. I grew up with this understanding of all this. But whenever I got out on my own, I went through an identity crisis going to college, not knowing who I was on my own, apart from my family and being the pastor's son, going to these private schools, and I didn't really know who Eric was. So that, coupled with being spiritually dead, put me in a very, very dangerous spot. And honestly, I think this happens to a lot of people. Some people navigate it much better than I did, and kudos to them. But maybe you didn't. Maybe you, like me, struggle with that, or maybe you're struggling with that even now. Let me tell you, you're not alone. You can navigate this thing, but you have to find your roots. You got to find your grounding point. It's ironic that I'm sitting on this rock today. This wasn't really a plan of it, but there's something about the stability of this rock. Even though it's sloped and I'm kind of bracing myself here by foot, there's a certain stability in this rock. This rock won't move. This is who Christ is. This is how God is in our lives. Like, he won't move. You can lean up against that. You can trust in the Lord with all thine heart, lean not on our own understanding. I'm not questioning where my footing is right now. I'm not questioning where I'm resting right now. I'm resting on the rock. This is what it's about. Getting into that place is the key.